Hey, everybody. Glad you're part of this. As you might know, for the last couple of months, we've been setting up some ways uh, to be live with Vote Common Good. And I'm trying to get I'm trying to get our Instagram stream set up along with all the other places where this is broadcasting. So we're testing out some equipment today. We're trying out these on all the different channels. Here's the thing. We're bringing a new daily podcast and live stream from Vote Common Good to all of y'all. It's going to be podcast style, meaning it's designed to be produced and generated and sent out as a podcast. So if you're into podcasts and you want to subscribe to this podcast, we would beg you to do so. You go to Vote Common Good on all the places where you get podcasts and look it up. We're having some fun with it. We're going to call it a Common Good Morning podcast. Now, here's the thing. Each day is going to have its own theme. Each day is going to have a set of hosts and guests. I get to be part of a whole bunch of these, so it's really fun for me. And we're going to be sorry about my distraction. I can't figure out. Here's the thing with Instagram. I'm just going to Instagram complain for a minute. We're working really hard to try to get all of our live streams over on Instagram because we care a lot about the people who only follow social media on Instagram. But Instagram doesn't allow you to stream on their platform from anywhere other than from your phone. Or you can use this like plugin, but then the plugin is horizontal instead of portrait instead of horizontal, and it's a mess. So it's not going to work. So I have this little setup here where I've got a phone that's pointing at an iPad, which has the same thing you're seeing on this screen. And I'm trying, and it just keeps glitching for some reason. So done complaining about Instagram. I'm going to stop looking at that. In fact, I'm just going to stop it so I don't even have to think about this anymore. All right. So sorry about all the distraction, but this is why we're practicing a week out because we're really excited about this podcast. It's Common Good Morning to all of you, meaning it's going to be a morning weekday podcast. And then on the weekend, we're going to take some of the best of all of those interviews, best of those conversations, best of those editorial moments, put them together into a podcast with some special elements that you didn't get to hear all week long. Now, some of you might be saying to yourselves, well, 5-day-a-week daily podcast plus a culmination podcast at the end of the week. Well, that's too much. I can't possibly listen to all that. We know that. Look, if any of you listen to all of that, we may need to talk about how you're spending your time. Of course, you can't listen to every single one of them, but we know that every day there's a different person who's going to have the opportunity to listen. So every day we want to be in people's inboxes with our emails. We want to be in people's social streams. We want to be in people's podcast apparatuses and in their ears. So that's why we're doing this. Also, one of the reasons it's so important for us to have all of these voices and all of these people engaged is because there's so many people that want to be part of this Vote Common Good moment. And they want to be part of this effort to try to say to people of faith that we are called to the common good. We are not simply called to our political identity. In fact, try this on for size. You're certainly not called to your religious identity. For me as a Christian, I will say Jesus's greatest teaching is you are not called to your own religious identity. You're not even called to your own spirituality. You are called to be a benefit and blessing to others. You are called for the common good. You are called to the collective life of all living creatures on this planet. So what we are called to is not just our own narratives, but we're called to the common good for all. So that's what we're trying to do with the Vote Common Good messaging. Now, that has a particular implication when it comes to our electoral politics, because a lot of evangelical, Catholic, Protestant Christians have been taught that if you're going to stay faithful to your religious identity, then you have to vote for a Republican. Well, it has never been more clear that just simply ain't the case. So what we're going to do is try to give to you the encouragement, the community, the rationale, the impetus for recognizing that your identity is to the common good. And whatever political party is opposed to that, you oppose that party. And whatever political party is into that, you stick with them until they violate it. Now, look, I'm a ardent anti-Republican at this moment, and I'm an ardent supporter of Democratic candidates. Even tried to be one at one point. So my cards want to be on the table, but that can change. I mean, I used to vote for Republicans. Now I think I was wrong about some things, and I've changed a lot, but the Republicans have certainly changed a lot. And so what we're trying to do is talk to voters about that. That's what this podcast is. Side note, we're also talking to politicians. We're also talking to the kinds of Democratic candidates that we know people of common goodwill want to vote for, but they don't often have contact with them. The candidates don't reach out to them. The voters don't know how to be in contact with these candidates or these elected officials. So we're going to do all that we can to try to help that take place as well, that connection between those. So this podcast, the daily, is meant to give you this kind of flow, this kind of input. Now, you're going to be hearing from all kinds of people on the podcast because each day is, as I mentioned, is going to have this different theme. Some of our themes are going to include science, faith, and theology. It's going to include our engagement with economics and how we think economically, because so often, I mean, people in their political life and in their civic life think that the only thing the government is supposed to do is help them make a buck or two. And we're going to talk about economics. We're going to talk about what the economic theory canon should be for so many of us. And we're going to be talking about politics specifically. Our Tuesdays, because Tuesday's election day in America, we're going to take Tuesdays to talk about the role of our politics, electoral politics, what's happening, interviews with politicians, interviews with academics, all of this. Now, undergirding so much of this is the need for people of Christian call and Christian understanding to care about the racial reckoning that needs to happen in this country. Race has embedded itself, is the context in which so much happens. So we have to look at it through the lens of race. And in this current period, we also have to look at so much of this particular conversation through the view of Christian nationalism. You see, Christian nationalism, which has always been around, right? There's always been people who have suggested that America is a unique, divinely ordained effort to advance Christianity in the world. Of course, some of the people who founded this nation founded it for that very reason. Yes, of course. But that's not who we are. That's not who we ought to be. It's been a debate about how do you have a separation between government and religion. That's often called the separation of church and state. How do people of Christian faith or any other faith tradition live with one another in this country that's pluralistic and where we're all joining together, never setting aside our religious convictions, but never expecting the state to do our bidding for us? That's always been this argument going on in our society. I believe that in the last 5 years, something unique has happened. I think Christian nationalism has actually changed. Now, sure, it's been around. Some of you, you went to summer camp or something, and you learned a couple of things. You learned a couple of Bible verses. You learned how to shoot a gun, which, I mean, ask me why Christian camps teach people how to shoot guns. And honestly, you wonder why we have a gun problem in this country. And you learned how to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So you're memorizing Bible verses, you're firing a weapon, and you're saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And you wonder why those people stormed the Capitol with a Jesus Save sign and then led a prayer when they were inside the Senate dais. Well, this is the kind of thing that's been going on, of course, for a while. But even all of that Christian uprising and upbringing that so many people were engaged in, all of that still doesn't even come close to what's happened in the last 5 years. It's almost like, take the metaphor of the coronavirus variants. The coronavirus changes because that's what viruses do. So the coronavirus has been changing over the last 14 or 15 months as it's inhabited the human bodies. And there's a new variant that, one was in South Africa, one that came out of the UK. I think there's even another that they've identified. And they'll say things like this. Look, here's the thing about that variant. It's more catchy. It's more transmissible. It's changed in how spreadable it is. One of the big problems of the Trump rise and the Trump presidency and all of the Christian accommodators to that world is that it morphed that Trumpist virus and then Christian nationalism virus in a way that has made it all that much more catchy, all that much more transmissible, all that much more dangerous, therefore. You see, because the more it spreads, like the coronavirus variants, it's not just that the coronavirus variants that the vaccines are going to work against them. That's not why they're worried that death rates are going to go up. It's because the more people who get the coronavirus, the more people get hospitalized and the more people who die from the virus. So you get more people with the virus, you're going to have more people dying. It makes it more deadly. I would argue the same thing with this Trumpist nationalism. The people who want to believe in the big lie, the people who want to believe that there is a plot in our government, across governments, across states, across political parties to take out Donald Trump, and that it's our God-given need to stop that. So we will kill one another. We will trample on our democracy. We will run over all of the agreed upon political institutions in this country for it. It's become even more deadly. So we're going to be talking about that a lot because there's no getting around it. And Vote Common Good is very serious about helping people de-radicalize, helping churches have a de-radicalization program for their communities, having individuals know how to talk to people in their own families or people that live next door to them or people that live down the street, that if people have become radicalized. And look, the context has been set for people to make this move. The context has been set for quite a while that you're going to have a religious takeover of this nation. And it's been afoot, and it's been afoot for a long time. So what we're going to be doing at Vote Common Good, and what we're going to be doing on this podcast is helping people to identify, understand, lean forward, and engage in that kind of work. So it's one of the resources. Now, this isn't all Vote Common Good is going to be doing. Vote Common Good is also going to be running a number of other things online, a number of special conversations, a number of special webinars, and places of engagement. And we're going to have some live streams that are not just us recording podcasts where you have multiple hosts all over the country on a screen. And I can't wait for you to meet all these hosts. You're just going to love it. And I'm not even going to tell you quite yet. We're going to roll this out over the course of the week about the people that are coming and are going to be part of the podcast. But I can't wait for you to meet all those. So you're not only going to see people in a podcast environment, with a big microphone in their face and recording this for audio purposes, but you're also going to be able to tap into some very specialized programming. We're going to talk a lot about abortion and how Christian voters should approach the very important and very frankly intense and difficult conversation about how we think about abortion in this country. So that's going to be a big one that we're going to be engaging in. Many issues around how we can become communities that are anti-racist is going to be part and parcel with the work that we're doing. So if that's something interesting to you, and also ways for us to be involved in social engagements and social projects in our society. Now, look, there's an awful lot that has to be done in our culture. There's an awful lot that has to be done in our society, and an ideology. I heard this great interview where the person was talking about what's an ideology, and you might think of an ideology as maybe something you don't want to be ideological. Right? Like you want to be practical or something. And I get that. But I heard this definition of ideology, and I think it's really important. It was specifically talking about Christian nationalism and how an ideology could become a real problem. But I also think there's a real upside to it. So here's a little food for thought for today. An ideology always has an ought to it. You see, an ideology, this is a Wikipedia definition, is a political ideology is a set of ethical ideas or principles or doctrines or myths and symbols of a social movement, institution, class, or large group that explains how society should work and offers some political and cultural blueprint to attain that social order. So breaking that down a little bit. An ideology is an argument about how things should be in the world, and then gives you a role to bring that about. So we're having an ideological battle in this country about the frames and the narratives and the understanding of how we should be, how we should engage in that, and what we should bring about. And look, as a pastor, I will say that people of my tradition, the Christian tradition, especially where I come from, the evangelical tradition, have used their ideologies in the last 5 years for purposes that are damaging to the planet and all who live on it. And it is not an extremist statement to say that there is an existential crisis at foot for the planet and for many people on this planet. So it's as serious as can be. And because things are serious, I think you have to come at a serious issue with everything you got. with humor, with music, with creativity, with poetry, with arguments, with new understandings. All of it has to be there. And we're in a time where this ideological battle means that we have to engage in an all of the above, all hands on deck, everyone moving forward. So this podcast, these live streams that are going to come out every day, these are designed for you to utilize in a way that's helpful and useful for you. We can't wait to get started. It's all going to get started next Monday, and we look forward to seeing you right back here in all the places where you're currently able to watch all of this. We'd love to have you on with us in all those places. Now, we're going to do what we can to turn that into something creative and some way that you can really, truly participate in what we're all up to. So it's going to have ways for you to chat. It's going to have ways for you to tweet us. It's going to have ways for you to give us input between the daily episodes. It's going to air each day somewhere around 10 a.m. Central Time. So some of the podcasts will be at 9 a.m. Central Time. Some of them are going to be at 10 a.m. Some might start at 10:30 because we have a variety of hosts that we need to accommodate schedules and coordinate schedules with. So I can't wait for you to be part of it. We're excited for all this to get going. And a common good morning to you from Vote Common Good.